This meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum, and the meeting has been duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. We will do our best this evening not to have too much fun, although I give everyone permission to have as much fun as they would like. So, thank you all for being here this evening to enjoy our victory with us. We are still riding a little bit high as the Board of Trustees and our principal and our teacher, because it was a Fort Bend ISD sweep last night. I don't mind saying. So if I can find my agenda, we'll get started. There it is. And we're going to start with special reports. So why don't we start with the HEB award, and then we will proceed into our other special reports. I'm going to set this up, if that's okay. Are you guys ready with the video? Okay, so the board was honored last night to be chosen as the HEB Excellence in Education Outstanding Board, and as well as Julie Diaz as Outstanding Secondary Principal of the Year, and Richard Embrick, Secondary Rising Star Teacher of the Year. So all three finalists, all three of us took home trophies, and we were obviously thrilled. I was glad the whole board and Dr. Dupree and Veronica and Nancy were there with us, and they all came on stage, and we thanked Charles Butt and HEB for the honor and mostly for supporting public education. Not many, well, I don't know of any other business that does that, and certainly doesn't advocate for public education the way they do. And so it was a red carpet event, and we felt like rock stars, and needless to say, we were, on cloud nine and still are today. So we wanted to share with you. HEB put together a very cool video, and they played it last night when our award was announced, and I wanted to share it with all of you. Okay, Jane.
Fort Bend ISD is in Fort Bend County, Texas. We're in a suburb of the Houston area. Our students come from all over the world. Nearly 100 languages are spoken in homes in Fort Bend ISD. And students also range in economic status. From the wealthiest of the wealthy, we have $12 million homes in our district, all the way down to homes with no running water. And we're recognized to be the most diverse public school district in the nation. Diversity is one of our greatest strengths. It's also one of our greatest challenges.
We have about 74,000 students. We have 11 high schools and 74 campuses total.
In Fort Bend ISD, this school board governs. They understand that they are responsible for the lives and futures of our 74,000 plus students. So what they are committed to doing is putting plans in place, systems in place to make sure every single student is inspired and equipped to pursue whatever future beyond what they can imagine.
It does all stem from the core beliefs and commitments, and that permeates throughout our district, and it guides everything that we do, that and keeping the student at the center. So we've had a lot of successes. We have had a 108% increase in the Hispanic population in taking AP exams. We had a 97% increase in the African American community taking AP exams. Those are huge gains, but I think we've expanded our programming in order to meet those changing demographics and make sure all students are served.
At school, I had the opportunity to join DECA, do business information management, where I got to be certified as a Microsoft specialist, so numerous opportunities to succeed, to learn new skills.
As diverse as we are, the board wants to know, and they want us to demonstrate that we have made every effort possible to engage every single citizen. No language barriers, no economic barriers. We don't want anything to stand in the way of them engaging with their public school district on behalf of their children.
And so through the listening tours that we've created this last year, we are listening to what their concerns are, but we're also using that as an opportunity to inform the community about some of the things that we are doing and some of the changes that are being made.
So they've really made it where they have a cohesive team between the board and the superintendent working together to make sure that they're getting information out to the community in different forums because we have such a diverse community.
Parents are very involved. So when you have parent involvement with the school board who is caring and who's willing to listen, that feels wonderful. You know, there's nothing more than being communicated to. Together, that mix is what makes a great school district.
Thank you, Jane. So I also wanted to share with you, last night when we had the acceptance speech, I took a few minutes to thank a few people, and some of you are in this room, and so I just wanted to share that as well. Of course, first and foremost, it was HEB and Charles Butt, and then also all of our families for allowing us to serve. We don't do this for the money. We do it because we care. We care about the community, and we care about the kids, and we care about the district. And so without our families supporting us, we couldn't do this. We literally could not do it. Also, of course, Dr. Dupree, because we truly are a team of 8, and that's what makes Fort Bend ISD strong. If the board and the superintendent didn't have a good relationship, and if we didn't have a strong leader and our superintendent, then we could not be Board of the Year. It takes the support of a strong superintendent and a strong leadership team, and that's those of you around this table. And so we appreciate all of you and everything that you do to support us and to serve the students in Fort Bend. And of course, Veronica and Nancy for filling out the application for us and helping to tell our story, and then preparing us for the interview and preparing us for the awards ceremony. We literally could not have done it without them, and they did such a great job, Nancy and her team, putting that application together, and then Veronica stepping in at just the right time to help us get ready for those interviews, and we just appreciate you and your entire team. So thank you all very much for that. So, you know, one of the things I didn't say last night, but that I would like to say on behalf of the board, is that, you know, team for us, we start with the team of 8, and then we have the extended team, that's our executive leadership team. But really, Fort Bend's a team all the way through. We don't work well, we don't function well, we don't serve the needs of all of our students, we don't support our teachers without every single person in this organization caring and doing their job and doing it well. And I think that this recognition is not just for us, but for the entire organization, because it just shows the hard work that's being done, and it shows that we really, you know, our focus is on what matters, and that's the student. And so thanks to all of you for your support. And do any of the other board members have anything that they would like to say?
Yes.
Bryce.
Thank you, Mrs. Tasson. I would just like to tell everyone here, many of you were not here 5 years ago in 2012 when Dr. Jenny and virtually the entire cabinet left en masse. And we had to begin rebuilding since then. From 2010 until I think 2013, we had 12 trustees roll off and on the board. That's excessive turnover. Excessive turnover at the board level translates to instability at the administration level, and it trickles down. And so I'm very excited that in this recent election, we returned all 3 incumbents to the board. That's the 2nd year in a row we've done that. And since Mrs. Tasson didn't go into all of the details, but since Dr. Dupree came, we have realigned all of the district feeder patterns and rezoned the entire district, passed the $484 million bond program. We've opened 2 elementary schools since 2015. We're going to open 3 this year to meet the needs of a growing community. And I really want to point out that we'll be talking, I'm sure, about the our tax rate and doing the tax swap. But I want to remind everyone that we voted to move forward with that when we thought we were going to have a tax swap. And we thought we were going to have to really use up some shoe leather in the community trying to explain this, because the state writes the ballot language, and the way it's written, it does not adequately explain what we're trying to do, and chances are it would be defeated. But Mrs. Tasson, Mr. Burdine, Mr. George, all up for election. They voted to support that with the rest of us. And that's something that can get a trustee voted out of office. So that takes a lot of courage, political courage, and the desire to basically do what is right for our kids, which involves giving the teachers a raise, to make sure that we're taking care of all of our staff, because it pays off in the long run for the benefit of our kids. So I'm very happy and proud, and I want everybody to know how hard they've worked and come through this election. And this award, if you had been there, Mrs. Tasson didn't say, but the former Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, was the speaker. He got a standing ovation. He gave the best speech on leadership I've ever heard in my life. It was a really big, big deal. So I'm just proud to be a part of this board and this school district, because we lead where others follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Anyone else? All right, I guess we have to move on from this. So are there any other special reports? Mrs. James.
Well, I just want to say we could talk about HEB, excellence in education, all night. I mean, I'd be okay with that, because it really was an exciting time, and exciting time last night, and exciting time for our board, and exciting time for Mrs. Diaz and Mr. Embrick as well. So we were glad to be celebrating with them. So while the judges were deliberating on the HEB Excellence in Education Outstanding Board, the Vision and Planning Committee has been working hard, and so is the Board of Trustees on the Vision and Planning process. So I have a special report from our committee tonight, and I'm going to read it to you, but I'm going to also ask that maybe it get emailed out to the whole board or in a written form so you can read it, because it's going to be kind of the subject of the next several of our meetings, or included in the next several of our meetings. The Vision and Planning Committee has met 10 times from August to April this year, and our last meeting was April 25th. Many thanks to the committee members, Kristen Tossan and Addie Hellinger and myself, for their faithful participation. Dr. Dupree and Mrs. Martinez have been on the committee since its inception, and Mrs. Saavedra and Mrs. Carabine have recently joined the committee. Over the year, which I should point out is only 8 months, we have written the profile of a graduate, encouraged the pursuit of the District of Innovation status for Fort Bend ISD, updated the strategic planning process to clarify board and administration roles, and this work has involved community input, board effort, and administration support. And that's not all. This spring, we've met several times to draft the next set of district goals for Fort Bend ISD. We began by processing a visionary needs assessment that was done by the administration and Hanover Research. Then we organized the board team building exercise in March to build the vision of what education should be like in Fort Bend ISD. Then, by combining the ideas generated in these activities using word webs and word mapping, we drafted some goals. We feel these new district goals reflect the board's vision of the future of teaching and learning in Fort Bend ISD. We also feel they reflect the community's expected qualities of a Fort Bend ISD graduate. We fondly refer to this set of goals as the basis for Fort Bend ISD 2.0. And there's more. During the process, we realized the need to align our governing documents. So we first looked at policy AE Local, titled Educational Philosophy, and we realized it needed to be revised to host the new profile of a graduate. Then we recognized the need to host some foundational operational principles in this policy to support our educational philosophy, namely the concepts of a guaranteed, aligned, and relevant curriculum, as well as leadership development in all areas of the organization and at all levels. The board has repeatedly recognized these two areas as fundamental to our core business of teaching and learning. Next, we reviewed our theory of action, which is in policy EA local. We recognized our organization was ready for an enterprise-level theory of action, which would inform the superintendent and the organization how to achieve the district goals. We will be bringing both these policies to the board for consideration next month. In addition, next month, we will be suggesting a revision to our district vision. This revision codifies our district effort to be student-focused and student-centered. And furthermore, it is supported by and aligned with all the work completed by the Board of Trustees over the past 2 years, as well as board-approved policy and governing documents. We expect our district mission to remain unchanged. In summary, when all is said and done, we, the Board of Trustees, will have aligned the mission, vision, core beliefs and commitment statements, the profile of a graduate, and our theory of action. Also, we will have new district goals and priorities that are board developed and based on our visionary needs assessment, as well as the best practices in education. Together, these governing documents and goals will set a new path for Fort Bend ISD. They will put into place the new way we will do the business of teaching and learning in our school district. They will lead to district SMART goals and to a new district action plan, and this will guide the work of the administration. All of this effort will lead to Fort Bend ISD graduates who exhibit the attributes as defined in the profile of a graduate. So I have a little woo-hoo in there. It's a lot of work by these ladies in particular, by a lot of staff too. So, and next week we'll have an information item that will present the revised documents and the draft district goals for discussion. It'll be an information item, and then hopefully we'll be able to bring it to action during the June meeting cycle. And hopefully next week also we'll have, we have a plan to present a graphic in the form of an updated roadmap to success to depict all the work that we've done over the past 2 years. That's my report.
Thank you, Mrs. James. I'll give you a woohoo. It was
Thank
really
you.
good.
I'm feeling pretty darn woohoo.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Well, the three of us have been really excited, so it's kind of, I think Charles thinks we've lost our minds because we're constantly all excited about everything, watching everything come together. So thank you for that report. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to add to her point about, she said the committee of the three, and on the backs of this award, I would like to thank the board and the committee members for being flexible with the committee meetings. Some of you all know I work downtown, and this board and the committee members are flexible enough that we meet through WebEx, as well as they've even ventured downtown to meet with me during my work hours to make sure that we're all collaborating with this committee. And I just want to especially thank them for that, being flexible to make it all happen. Thanks.
Well, that's excellent, Addie. Thanks for saying that. But thank you for participating because your perspective has been really valuable in this process. So we wanted to get a range of perspectives, and I've appreciated working with you very much on this project. You've had great input.
Are there any other comments by any other board members? I want to particularly thank you, Grail, because she has really led this effort. She's chairing the committee, and she has done a great job of keeping us focused and keeping us coordinated and scheduling things and making sure that Addie is, that we're able to accommodate her. And so you've led this effort really magnificently, and we appreciate you for that. And I think you guys, the rest of the board's going to be really excited to see what we produce from this committee, and you'll be getting that really soon. And the efforts of our team building and all of our work have really culminated, and I think you're going to be proud of the work. At least I hope so. So thank you for that. Do we have any other special reports? I have one last thing. I wanted to really recognize our Fort Bend Education Foundation tonight and all the work that they do for Fort Bend ISD and the schools in our district and the teachers in our district. And I just wanted to give everyone some information as Fort Bend Education Foundation is closing out their year. They have awarded 266 grants through their Grants for Teachers in Schools program for $404,664.23 for the 2016-17 school year. That is phenomenal. Additionally, they awarded gifts of $28,885 for new teachers beginning their teaching careers, and $20,000 for professional development grants, and $73,828 in pass-through grants, for a grand total of $527,377 this year to Fort Bend ISD. Yes. So I have had the pleasure of serving ex officio on that board this year, and I will tell you there is not a more dedicated group of volunteers than on the Fort Bend Education Foundation board, and the other volunteers that they recruit throughout the year. All the work on the gala, which is really one of my favorite of the whole year. And they are continuously trying to innovate and find ways to help support our teachers and our schools in Fort Bend ISD. And they are really, in my opinion, the best in the state of Texas. We just really have a great foundation. So I wanted to recognize them and let everyone know all the hard work and money that they're pouring into our schools. Okay, moving on. Next to our information items, we're going to start with the bond program update. Dr. Dupree.
Yes, ma'am. Last week we conducted our quarterly bond oversight committee meeting. So as in follow-up, as we generally do, we're going to provide that same update to the board this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Oscar, I believe, to begin that report.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and congratulations once again. At this time, I want to call Ron and his team up to the table. If y'all will come take your place, and going to have them assist us with the presentation of the 2014 bond program. I feel we're bringing y'all some good news, so I'm excited to hear it myself. Ron?
Good evening, Madam President and trustees, Dr. Dupree and staff. As Charles mentioned, this was a presentation that was made to the BOC less than a week ago. The way their calendar falls, the next opportunity would have been 3 months. So, but from the good input that we received at the conclusion, it was very well received, very enlightening, and I think made a good foundation for your next their planning. Before we get started, though, I want to give congratulations to Kristen and Jason and KP for the Saturday night results. That was good. So, way to go, guys. Happy to present that your bond program, your 2014 bond program, is within its forecasted budget and it's progressing well. So all 3 of your new elementaries are scheduled to be complete this fall semester, followed by the 6 additions are going to be complete this fall. Your new CTE is just started the procurement phase, so we're getting ready to price that out. And all the other bid packages, as well as the district-wide projects, are progressing as well. So I'd like to turn this over. We're just going to start real quickly with a brief overview of your budget. So there's Andres right there.
Good evening. Sandra Becerra, Project Controls Manager from Jacobs. And what we have here on this slide is a budget indicator which gives us a graphic and executive representation of the overall bond program status from the financials perspective. As of April 10th of 2017, we had committed $287 million of $484 million bond program, which corresponds to 59%. Commitments refer to any contracts or purchase orders that the district has in place to date with different vendors that we are utilizing for the execution of the bond program. As of April 10 of 2017, we also had cost to date of $189 million, which correspond to 39% of the overall bond program. And cost to date refers to payments processed to all the different vendors that we have working for the bond program. It is important to know that out of the $189 million cost to date that we have on this slide, around 50% is for new construction payments process as of April 10th of 2017. Now, Ron will provide an update on the program status.
As Zandra mentioned, we're approximately 58 to 59% complete of your overall bond program. So our spending rate still remains a little over $1 million a day. So there's a lot of money being spent, as well as a lot of activity going on across the district. Once the new schools are open, that will quickly decline, and then we'll even out, and it will carry on to the end. As you recall, your bond program was divided into 3 phases. So your phase 1 projects were the biggest ones and the ones that were started off at the first. So you're about 61% complete of those. All of them are in construction, with a couple of them starting to close out in the warranty phase. Your phase 2 projects, all of those are in construction, just began construction, and exception of one bid packet that you guys will see in June. So they'll all be in the construction phase. Phase 3 projects have really just begun the design phase. So you've passed all the architects' contracts, they've been executed, and they're in what we call the scope to budget phases, where they're going out to each school and determine what the scope is at the time. Next steps, obviously we need to complete phase 1. We need to get all the construction done and start that warranty and closeout phase that we just referenced. Your phase 2 projects will continue quickly behind in the construction phase. So we need to wrap that up. And then phase 3 projects, we need to get the architects to finish their scope to budget, get budgets for it, and then contracts awarded, and start that work. So in a nutshell, that's really brief, but I think it covers you, gives you an idea of what just overall status is.
Do you mind telling us what SD, DD, and CD is?
Schematic design,
Okay.
design development, and then construction documents. That's your 3 phases of design. So back to budget, a little more details. I'm going to give you a little more detail or specifics about your overall budget.
This slide provides an update on the projected program budget that we presented to you in a prior workshop meeting. So this is just an update, and it's important to know that the data that you have here is data as of April 20th of 2017, and it changes constantly as we speak right now, as we approve new commitments and change orders are approved in each project. So I will go through the columns first to explain how this table works, and then through the rows. And on the columns, you will see the phases of the bond program and a district-wide column. Phase 1 corresponds to the projects included in BP 1 through BP 13. Phase 2 includes the projects from BP 14, BP meaning bid package, through the bid package 21. In phase 3, bid package 22 through bid package 29. That's how we broke down all our projects in phases. Then the district-wide column primarily addresses technology, transportation, land, bond support, and program contingency, primarily. Now I'm going to walk you through the rows that we have there. The first row correspond to actuals or current commitments and any approved change orders that we have for those projects where we have a general contractor in place. The second row corresponds to pending commitments. The third row is the total projected budget. And the fourth is the bond. And then the last one, the projected program balance, is the difference between the last two that I just mentioned. So I will go through the phase one column in detail to explain how we arrived at the $5.6 million that we are showing there as a projected bond program balance. So the first number that we see there is $188 million, and that corresponds to all the current commitments that we have for the projects that are within the phase one, including any approved change orders. Then you'll see like a $26 million number there, and that corresponds to all the pending commitments and pending change orders. When we add up those two numbers, we can see there a $214.5 million, which is the total projected budget. Then we compare that against the bond approved budget for those projects included in that phase of $220 million. And that's how we come up with $5.6 million for the phase one projects. Phase two, which is the second column to the right, we use the same logic here. And the total projected budget that you see there is $47 million, which when we compare to the budget approved or by the public of $51 million reflects a $4.7 million of program balance. It is important to note, as Ron said, that phase one and two are under construction, so we have general contractors working actively. We have presented the budgets to the board for approval, and we have approved contingencies, which we track very closely. So I want to point out a note that we have at the bottom of the page, the second note, that says that the phase one and two total project, total projected budget excludes construction contingency balances. That means that at the time these numbers, we calculated these numbers, we took all the contingencies, the construction contingencies that were approved. We deducted all the change orders that were approved, and then we deducted the pending change orders, and any balance is already included in the bond program balance that we have, meaning the 5.6 and the 4.7. Now, moving on to the third column, phase three. This is a unique phase for us right now because it's in design. So we are just now receiving estimates from the architects. So in these numbers here, because we have not bid the jobs and we have not taken the budgets yet for approval to the board and so forth, we are assuming that the budgets are the $118 million is actually the project budgets. So when we compare that to the 114, we see a shortage of $4.1 million. That is because we have received one estimate from the architects for the Career and Tech building, and that estimate came over budget. Now, right after this slide, our construction manager, Kevin, is going to explain in detail this project and is going to give you the reasoning behind this over budget estimate. Moving to the district-wide, the first number that you see there is $66 million, and those are commitments today. We are tracking all the commitments and all the costs for that scope of work. And on this column here, the total projected budget of $98.6 million, we are assuming that we the district will spend all the money allocated for the district-wide items that I just described, and that is why we have a zero projected bond program balance as of 4/20th of 2017. So the last column is simply we add up all the columns, and in short, we are projecting a budget of $478 million, which compared to 484 gives us a $6 million or $6.2 million of bond program balance as of April 20th of 2017. So the plan is that now Kevin will go over the career and tech building to explain more about the 4.1 shortage, and he'll also talk about other projects.
Thank you, Zandra. She said I was going to go into detail. I'm not so sure it's detailed, but I think it'll be helpful to understand where we've been with the Career Tech project and where the estimates tell us we could end up. Remember, they're just estimates at this point. So the milestones that we've listed up here are kind of important because the site was actually purchased in 2011. That was the Telfair site. It was to be an educational facility and was just retained by the district for several years. In November or December of 2015 is when we went out with an RFQ for qualifications for an architect. The architect's contract was actually issued and approved by the board early April or late March. Immediately after that, they spent some time reviewing several site options as well as working towards the schematic design. When we came back to the board in July, we approved the schematic design and made a final selection on the site, which was the Telfair site. The Telfair site, once we had that approval, we were able to go out and have a geotech report done where they look at the soils to decide what the foundation of the building's going to structurally become. Most of the projects we've built in Fort Bend, we have done samples down to about 30 feet deep into the dirt. So the contractor goes out, the geotech engineer, he drills a hole 30 foot deep and he comes back and tells us what the soil looks like. He did that and came back and said the soil's not good. He didn't find anything solid in the 30 foot that he drilled. And they drill multiple holes. So we did a change order to him and had him go back and drill deeper so we could find out exactly how deep you'd have to go to hit something that was bearing, a clay layer or something that was solid to build the building on. The second set of geotech results came back to us probably early February. The first set was in January and the second set came up in February. So about that time we knew that we had more than a normal foundation that we were dealing with. The current design has piers that are several feet in diameter and up to 80 feet deep. So big concrete piers that go way down underneath that building and that project. Because of that, we know that it's going to take some additional time to construct. It is a more involved process from the contractor, and that it will also take additional dollars. The architect's best estimate for the price is about a $4 million hit that we have on the foundation design. And it'll take somewhere between 20 and 24 months to actually construct it. So that's why we have on the schedule an occupancy that's pushed out there into summer of 2019. I just want to make sure everybody understands that when we work with the contractor, we'll finalize what those dates are, but it's not expected to be any shorter than that because of the complexity of the project. So the next steps. Right now we've advertised. The project advertised May 2nd, and it advertises again May 9th. We have a pre-bid meeting and some meetings with the contractor. We would be taking bids from contractors early June. I believe it's June 2nd. And at that point, we'll have a better understanding of what our budget and time implications are. We would rank those contractors. We're hoping for multiple bids. At this point, there's 4 contractors, big general contractors, that have picked up sets of plans. So we want to make sure that we get multiple bids so we know what the projects really should be valued at. We would rank those and then meet with that general contractor and negotiate the best price and scope for the district's current budget. That may include some cutbacks in some of the finishes, some of the things that aren't needed immediately, but I don't really want to speculate on what those would be, except that when we meet with the contractor, we'd be able to iron out some options there. That kind of brings us to the last, where we would be occupying the building again by summer of 2019. Want to briefly go over the status of the new construction, Donald Leonetti Elementary School. That project is being built by Satterfield Ponticus, and the architect is IBI. It's about 80% complete. They're working inside on the finishes, the paint, the drywall's fairly well complete. A lot of tile work going up. They've got some air running in the building, so things at this point start happening very quick, and that's a good position to be on this project. It's adjacent to the middle school. If we want to go to the next slide, Ronald Thornton Middle School. The middle school there, I know it should be a big priority or concern, but it doesn't open until the following year, and the contractor's schedule is showing us, and our substantial completion is in April of 2018. And so I'm sure we won't have any big schedule issues with that project. They are kind of tracking just a little bit behind the elementary school there with the framing and the structure. James Neal Elementary School is the project that we accelerated. That project is due to be complete early July, which is a good time frame because it will allow the district some time to work out computers and furniture and those things that happen in the month of July. I think they're close to 95%, 92% complete. James Patterson Elementary School, just down the block from that one. Been in that school several times in the last week. They're working on drywall, coming right along. Air conditioning is due to be turned on middle of the month with power, so that again helps with the finishes, and they start working much faster on the interior piece once the air starts flowing there. The 6 elementary additions, they're all 10 classrooms except Cornerstone. I think Cornerstone is a 12 classroom addition. They're all about the same status. Teal Construction is doing 4 of those projects, and Prime, I believe. I better look. I think it's Bass. Yes, I'm sorry, it's Bass that's doing the other 2 projects. All of them are about the same state, where the structure's up, the slab's down, they're starting to close in the building and working away with that. It should be complete per their contract, which is mid-year, mid-semester. I don't see anything that would slow that down at all either. And Brian takes this. Great.
Thank you. One of the things that we have done is to look at the construction cost of our historic projects as well as the projects that we anticipate going forward to come up with a construction estimate of what we might expect to see in terms of construction costs as we move into future planning for future bond projects. And in order to do that, one of the things that we did is we did a chronology of construction costs on projects that will go back as far as Schiff Elementary all the way up to the 3 projects that we're anticipating completing over the next several months. One of the things that I'll say as I get into these numbers is that this can be considered a quick and dirty calculation in terms of applying a inflation factor to the projects to see how things look. But what Oscar at Jacobs has done is gone in and done a little more refinement on that actually produces a number that we feel like we can use as we go forward in terms of planning purposes. So I'll review for you the quick and dirty method, and then I'll turn it over to Oscar in just a moment. So to begin with, we used the construction cost data from RS Means and Harvey Cleary. Those are two national firms that track construction costs. One of the benefits with Harvey Cleary is they're actually a Houston-based firm that has a national presence. So the information that they provided was about a 20% inflation factor, and you can see the information that's here on the right is actually from RS Means, and it's showing about a 21.2% inflation factor over a 10-year period. So we feel that the fact that those two numbers are highly correlated, we feel comfortable using a 21% inflation factor over a 10-year period. And that works out to about a little over 2.1% per year inflation factor over a 10-year period. So what we did in order to apply those inflation factor, we looked at the starting point of the construction project and then applied the appropriate year inflation factor to that project to bring it to a present value. So when we're looking at those numbers that you see at the bottom, that's actually a present value number of those projects that were started up to 10 years ago. So in looking at that, you can see based on that methodology, we're looking at an average construction cost of just under $191. There is some variability between the two project types, which I think, when I say two project types, the two bond packages, the 2004 and 2014, I think Oscar can touch a little bit on that. But like I said, the application of the inflation index is a high-level view, and it doesn't point out some of the individual factors that influence costs. And with that, I'll turn it over to Oscar with Jacobs, who can show you some of the refinements that they've used to come up with a more detailed construction number.
Thanks, Brian. As part of the BOC's duties, it's their job to provide recommendations on this and future bond projects. So they've asked us to go back and average out costs for this current bond program's elementary schools. We've gone back and looked at elementary school 48, 49, and 50, averaged out those costs, and in order to use those costs for planning purposes, we've normalized those costs. One of the things that we've done is we've taken out any outliers that exist. One of the outliers that you could see on this slide at the very top is elementary school 49 had an acceleration cost that is not typical of most schools. We've taken those costs out of this model. In addition to that, we've used a standard, industry standard square foot calculation model, and you can see that on the very bottom. It's not just a square foot of the building, but it also includes canopies, those type of things. And the reason why we needed to do that is so we can make sure that we could compare apples to apples when we're comparing to other projects across the area and across the state. So with those things taken into account, we looked at the overall program costs and grouped them in three major components. Those categories are building, site improvement, soft costs, and contingencies. We've done that because it's important to understand what costs are for just the ed spec part of the building, which you could consider that the building space and 5 feet around of the building. You also needed to understand what happens when you move that building into different sites, and that's why we broke out that site improvement cost. Now, that's not the cost of the actual site of the earth. That's the site that it costs to bring that earth up to a usable state. And then the soft costs and contingencies, that's something that affects all the projects. In the past, we've heard that that's where projects kind of get caught in an issue with budget where those soft costs and contingencies are really taken into account during the planning phase. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to break it out that way. First, we'll start looking and talking a little bit more about the building costs. On average, district is spending about $185 a square foot for your current elementary schools. In the future, that number can be affected by three major things, and that's the market condition or inflation. That's something that Brian was working through as he showed us the differences between the 07 bond and this bond. Any changes to the ed spec and changes to the construction standards could also affect the cost of that building square footage. On the site improvements, as anybody could imagine, anytime you relocate that building, it's going to cost something different because you put it on a different site. If you think of a remote site that has no utilities on it, well, that's going to cost more to upgrade versus a local site that has all the utilities and it's ready to go. And then on the soft cost and contingencies, That includes costs for architects, engineers, for surveying, environmental conditions and environmental reports, environmental remediation. It includes design and construction contingencies, and it also includes costs for IT and FF&E budgets. The things that can affect that number are the delivery method. If you go from, for example, in the 2007 bond program, CMAR model versus a CSP model. Any risk that the district was to take on, that would also affect their contingency levels. And any changes to the equipment or IT models. That's how soft cost and contingency could change. So with that, I think that entire picture gives you just a good overall number to plan for future bond programs.
Okay, so my little piece of IT world. For wireless, we are ahead of schedule. Basically, we're just finished our 15th elementary school, so we are well ahead of our planned schedule, and we are planned to finish by the end of school year 17-18. Instead of the original plan of the calendar year of 2018. So we have everything lit up with Wi-Fi by the summer of this coming summer. Not this summer, but the summer after. Then after that, right now we're also currently doing optimization with our high school. In other words, we're trying to put in places where there are dead spots that we didn't have before. So we're going to cover those. Security camera server and storage issue that we have basically have been resolved with a vendor, and also with our storage redesign, so that way there is no more I guess freezing of the frame because of the large number of data that was being ported through the storage. So we have that resolved. On schedule for elementary school deployment, and then we're planning for additional storage capacity as well. This is to take into consideration the SB 507 as well. Wire area network, pure speed light wave has begun the installation of the WAN, which is the connectivity between the schools and back to the data center. And they are starting to design and install the fiber routes throughout the district. The equipments are in order. The challenges, we ran into a couple in terms of obtaining permits from the LIDs. So we are working through those. Data center renovation, we're 90% completed. The only thing we have left to basically get the infrastructure of that up and running is the natural gas generator. We're going to install it this summer because we need a little bit extended outage in order to take it down and basically install the natural gas generator. And then we also provided the tour of the data center for the Bond Oversight Committee. They were very, very excited about it.
As far as the transportation update, as you'll recall, originally we had 150 diesel buses that we purchased, and those are already here and they're in service and have been for a while. We also have purchased 30 CNG buses. Those buses are presently with the manufacturer, and they're putting in all our systems, the radios and everything in there, and we expect delivery of those by the end of this month. So we should be receiving those. Both of these purchases, what they've done is they've increased our air conditioning by 12%, and also video cameras increased by 44% to 100% of all the routes on that. The GPS increase, obviously we didn't have them before, and now we have it, so it was literally 100% increase, and we also included our white fleet within that. And the average age of our fleet has been reduced from 11 years to 6 years, which really puts us in a lot better position as we move forward, with future replacements. We also received a grant for the CNG buses, and we don't have the money yet because there's certain things that we have to do before we get that. One of them is receive the new buses, and then the second part of that is that we have to go ahead and show proof that we are destroying buses that were actually running. So in other words, we can't take something that was already in the boneyard and and tell them it has to be something that was on a route. We have to show proof of that, and we have to show proof that we have destroyed it. And then once we submit all of that, then the funds will be released, which are approximately $1.4 million that'll be coming our way.
Okay, so to get you up to date on the small business initiative, we have 46.1 million has been set aside for small business contractors. That's 24% of what's been the approved construction budgets. Our goal is 25, so we're close. So, but we're going to keep plugging away at the small business initiative. Ms. Boulware's been doing a really good job with that. We started talking with the, go to the next slide. We started talking to the Bond Oversight Committee about our planning for Bond 2018. Okay, the first and foremost on there, we know we're going to need to be doing Elementary 51, and so that's one of the ones on the list, and then we'll look at the rest based on the 10-year plan. We're going to be looking at facility efficiencies as we've done in the past, more on electrical power distribution, life cycle needs we're expecting. We're going to be looking at initiatives to help us save energy, and also on the HVAC side, we definitely know we need help there. The things that are starred, those are items that we may or may not decide to finance through general fund reimbursement resolution. If there are items that we think are strategic that will need to come to the board to actually get started on before the Bond 2018 election, we would have the ability to do the reimbursement resolution, which is actually one of the agenda items that you have tonight, is the reimbursement resolution, not just for Bond 2018, but also for 2007, 2014, because we always want to use our general fund money, wisely, so we can put off issuing any debt as long as possible. But this gives us the opportunity to finance some of these things early. And Elementary 51 is one of the items that we did talk about whenever we were going through scoping Bond 2014. We thought, okay, do we put 51 in? Do we put it out? We knew we would eventually need it, but in the end, we decided to not include it in Bond 2014. But we will need to start on it before the election. So that'll be one, and you'll see some information on that in the future. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So some of the other things we've talked to the board, to the BOC about. We will, be looking to make some investments in some of our athletics, fine arts, and administration facility enhancements. It's been a while since we've done anything, especially on athletics and administrative facilities from a district-wide perspective. If there are any security gaps that we feel like we need to close, we'll be having that. CNG infrastructure in particular, we'll need to be doing on, because that wasn't something that we had planned on originally in the capital planning. IT will be a very large item in Bond 2018 that we're expecting, and so we'll have a lot more information on that in the future. On the furniture, if we feel like we're on the right track from a 21st century perspective, and we like how that's flowing, we look to probably have a placeholder for that, to have that out on a district-wide rollout that could be done in stages. And so that's something we'd have in Bond 2018, as well as other CTE enhancements. I think that's it.
That concludes our report, and we'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you all for a very thorough presentation. We appreciate each one of you being here and presenting on your respective area of expertise. So do we have questions or comments from the board members? Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes. On the projected program budgets, I noticed that it says Phase 1 and 2 exclude construction contingency balances. So what would this look like if we were to include some of those contingencies? I know that's been a big topic over the past few months.
So what that means is that if we have any contingency balances at this point, we are now planning on using them. That's around $7 million for those two phases. So right now, your 5.6 and your 4.7 are assuming that any contingency that we have not used or is now pending is in that number. Does that make sense? Will come out of that. That's correct.
Mr. Rice.
Well, I'm just curious why you would separate Phase 1 and Phase 2 and exclude the construction contingency balance, but include it in Phase 3. What's the rationale behind that?
Yes, sir. The rationale behind that is that since we do not have all of our estimates in, then we're taking a worst-case scenario on that we would use every bit of that budget. And we have the one estimate that came in for the CTE that was above, and that's why that 4.1 million is there.
All right, but why are they excluded from Phase 1 and Phase 2? I'm not following that.
Okay, because on Phase 1 and Phase 2, we actually already have project budgets and contingencies that were approved, and we also have change orders that have been approved, and we know where we are as far as pending change orders. So this is money that actually is, at this point, we don't have anything hitting it. And so we have a pretty good idea as of this date that we have that money available, whereas in the Phase 3, we would have to make an assumption, and we're wanting the assumption to be the worst case that we would use it on.
So Phase 1, did I hear you say 7 million? Or,
That's correct.
so we have 7 million in Phase 1?
That's correct. And Phase 1 and 2.
Okay. But if I add Phase 1 and 2, I'm getting 9 million, 10 million.
That's correct. So out of the numbers that you see in those two, we have $7 million that just belong to construction contingency. The rest are design contingencies, or it could be professional services that we may need, or we're still, for example, we have other project costs, we have furniture that we haven't used yet. So the budget, those are what we consider pending commitments.
Well, okay. It's very unclear, especially when Phase 1, we're almost done with construction and we're starting closeout on some of these projects. Why we would have contingency for architects or FF&E, I don't know. I don't understand that. So we actually have, well, I'm really lost. I'd really like to know how much money we have in Phase 1 and Phase 2. You're saying that so what you're telling me is that we've got over $10 million in Phase 1 and Phase 2 combined, that it's not committed?
That's correct.
Okay. And there is some money that's committed that we haven't used. So it actually may increase. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
If we don't use it over time?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I just think we should say that to be clear.
Okay.
So, Mr. Perez, on the last slide, what are the CTE enhancements that we need to do? Why are we going to do value engineering on the CTE center if right now it's 4.1 million possibly over budget, and yet we've got 6.2 million available? So if we're 4.1 million over because of the foundation, okay, but we could build that and still have $2 million, 2.1 million left over. Why wouldn't we do that?
Yes, sir, and that would be our plan at this point, but these enhancements are also future enhancements for other programs that are at the schools, not necessarily just at the CTE.
Okay, so it's not VE.
No, this is not.
But you did mention that you might do VE.
Correct.
Okay, but why would we do that if we've got the money to pay for it?
Well, we would just want to be prepared, and, in case, there was something that happened, we need to go through that exercise to be able to bring y'all all options.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mrs. James.
So I have a clarification question on, first of all, thank you, Mr. Rice, for your questions. I had similar line of thinking, and I keep struggling to try to understand this, and I keep seeing it a different way every time, and so I'm still working at it, and I might need some accelerated learning. So I'd also, with regard to the CTE Center, so I heard Mr. Hitchcock say that they drilled down once, they didn't hit anything solid. They went back and drilled again. That's when I lost track of what actually happened. And then I understand that translates to approximately $4 million in estimated foundation. So I missed a little bit of detail on what were the findings on the second attempt at the geotech drilling?
Yes, ma'am. So the process is they take a rig out, they drilled 30 feet, they didn't find anything solid. It was all what we sometimes call muck.
I understand.
Then they went back out a second time and drilled down to 90 feet, and about 80 foot is where they hit a clay layer, something that's solid enough to actually put a foundation on.
Okay, that's the detail that I missed. So thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
You want to comment on it?
Yeah, I do. So there was only one hole drilled?
No,
Okay.
they do multiple holes
Okay,
based upon both the parking lot and the building. And it seems like there were 6 underneath the building, but I could be wrong. It might have been 7.
All right. And so, do we have any of these conditions anywhere else around? Have we encountered this, or just?
We've not had that on any of the projects we're building, no, sir.
Okay.
We've had foundation problems or issues.
Put microphone on, please, Mr. Holliott. Thank you.
We've had other issues for foundations. Every one of your new schools have a structural slab, which is kind of contrary to what you had in 2007. And they're all related to just different various soil conditions. So that's what it took. And you don't know that until you do that investigation. Then you determine what bearing it takes to hold that building up. CT building is a large building. It's got a lot of point loading in different places. Some of the piers are 60 inches in diameter. They're huge piers, so they vary between 60, 48, 36. So it's going to be a fairly good contractor, not the normal school contractor, like a high-rise type guy. Is going to have to come in there with a rig. They can drill that, case that, pull that case out, as they place the concrete. So it's a complicated foundation, but once it's done, it should work very satisfactory.
Okay. All right.
All right, my second set of questions have to do with slides 12 and 13 that are the estimated costs for the new schools, or estimated costs for schools of the future. So when I looked at, I'm lost between the third bullet on that slide that's showing now shows, and you say an average construction cost of $191 per square foot for an elementary school. Is that correct understanding of that slide?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Then if you go to the next slide, I do not see the number 191 there. So I'm asking, how do I relate the two? How do I relate the two models, or is this what you were describing, that Mr. Sands did a different type of modeling and came up with these numbers on this slide 13?
Correct. I think what Brian was describing is when he projected out costs, it was more based on history and time.
And inflation.
Obviously, yeah, inflation. What we did is we took your actual costs for the 3 elementary schools, literally cost in the contract, and averaged those numbers out. Took out outliers, normalized with square footage type of calculation, but their actual average of those 3 schools. So it's a more precise number because it's the literal numbers that you have under contract right now. Now, that $183 a square foot is actually going to change just a little bit when construction is over, because what it does not include is any change orders that are going to occur or have occurred during the construction process. We'll go back and recalculate those numbers once construction ends, and that number will change a little bit, but it shouldn't change by more than like 3%.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there so I understand. I'm putting this together now, but I do have some concern that there's a difference. When I add that up, that's a 233, 234 type number compared to a 191.
And that's
number.
correct.
That's a big difference.
So if you want to tie these numbers to the ones that Brian put together, you would compare building plus site improvement costs, because Brian was averaging the construction or the cost of the work is what he was averaging, versus we're looking at programmatic costs, and you use that for planning purposes. You not only take the cost of the work, but you also have to take into account any of the contingencies you're going to carry, any soft costs, any cost for designs, environmental impacts. In the past, we've heard that sometimes people tend to forget about those budgets, so that's why we put it up there front and foremost. It's you know what you're experiencing now, and you can use that number in the future.
Okay, so I think that's great, and because obviously we're estimating over a long period of time, and we're estimating a great deal of construction costs. So a small variance in the number we use for estimation makes a big difference in the end number.
Correct.
So I'm trying to understand the value and the accuracy and the comfort level I feel as a trustee with the number that we're going to use. And so that's why I'm just trying to compare apples and apples.
Sure.
I completely agree with you. We need to include all our soft costs, our potential contingency, whatever, FFE, all the pieces of it, absolutely. But I just want to understand what I'm comparing. So if I take these numbers and add it up and say it's 198.50 or something like that, that is the number to compare to Brian's number.
Correct.
Of the 191.
Correct. So Brian's number includes both building and site improvements.
Got it.
One of the reasons why we broke out site improvements is because of what we're talking about right now, where site can have a huge impact.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I do.
Ms. Gallagher.
Just quickly, the soft cost, and I had some of the similar questions that both Mr. Rice and I'm tired. I'm tired today. Grail and Jim had today. But I do want to make sure that the soft cost, does that include all your professional services? Is that what's included in that?
Yes, ma'am. It includes all professional services, architects, engineers, surveyors, environmental consultants. I'm thinking of more geotech. I think that's all the professional services.
All right. So when it comes to total cost of ownership, we're looking at, I think you already did the math of 240 something, right? And so, and then this, I just want to make sure I'm clear. The previous slide does not include the soft costs. So how do we get that number, a graph that looks similar to this that includes all of these costs that you have outlined here? I don't know who's that directed to.
So the short answer to that would be is as long as those costs are initially associated with the project, they would be included in there. But in some cases, some of the work that some of the work that's being done will not necessarily be associated with a project because it needs to be done to prepare for the bond election or a bond package. So it becomes somewhat difficult to group all things in when you're looking at historic prices if it's not associated with a project. So essentially, we've narrowed it down to the costs that are associated with specific projects. Like I mentioned, Shift Elementary, some of the other campuses that were built, and we can capture those costs and inflate those, but not necessarily if the cost was not associated with the project.
One thing to take into account is that it's very typical to look at what most planners call an 80-20 split. There's an 80-20 split between construction versus soft costs, and that's pretty standard. What you'll see is that Fort Bend ISD is actually experiencing a lower cost for soft costs. It's roughly in the 18% range. It's a healthy range. So I guess one way to look at it is without looking at more data for Brian's spreadsheet, you could just take that number, add 20% to it, and that's roughly what historically soft costs are going to cost. We can certainly look at providing more or looking for more data to give you that information.
Okay, I'll take this offline with, because I think to Grail's point, and it's hard sometimes with some of these documents, you're trying to compare apples to apples, even with the slide that Jim talked about. It becomes difficult sometimes. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate you being here this evening. Okay, let's move on to item B, which is the district financial report. Mr. Bassett.
Thank you. Ms. Tassan, members of the board. So quarterly, we submit the financial report to you all. It's sent out with the overall package. We typically don't have slides, prepared for it, but we do take any kind of questions that you may have on what was submitted, and we'll be happy to take any questions that you may have on our financials.
Do we have questions on the financials from the trustees?
There will be a separate presentation later just about the budget and the future. This is about
right. This is about what was presented in the packet. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. James.
I don't have it pulled up, but I did try to look for the situation on the healthcare spending, and I couldn't actually find it. So maybe you could point that out and give us an update on that particular thing. So I know at one point we were pulling workers' comp money out of the workers' comp fund in order to fund that, and I think we.
Yes, ma'am. That has continued. Luckily, the rate of loss has decreased on the health fund, because now that we're in 2017, some of the mitigation items that we put into place for 2017 that we disclosed to the board and we had as part of our open enrollment are starting to come into play. So we're not losing as much on a monthly basis, but we are still losing money. And so we're working diligently with the benefit committee, coming up with our ideas. We're going through for the 2018 year, and we are going through the RFP process right now with United Healthcare, and then also with potentially carving out the pharmacy expenses into a separate package. And so we're working diligently on that. To date, we have pulled out $1.8 million from the workers' comp to cover the balance. But we are going to have a increase in premiums. I mean, for the first time in 4 years, that will help us cover the costs. The district will be contributing $3 million more into the plan from a general fund perspective, and that'll be done on a per employee per month basis. And so that's the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. Ms. Helliger, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Mr. Burdine, did you have a question?
I wanted to make a comment that I really like the slide of why not just reduce the tax rate. I think those are some great points. I know that I've had that question asked in the community before, so I wanted to say I appreciated that.
I think he is actually going to present that a little bit later. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this was on what was in our board packet, not on the quarterly financials and not on the budget. That's a really good point. Any other questions on the financials quarterly report? Okay, hearing none, we are going to convene in closed session under the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, and those sections listed in the agenda, and for purposes of private consultation with the board's attorney on any or all subjects or matters authorized by law. We are now convened in closed session. Thank you, Mr. Bassett.
Thank you.